How do you deal with jealous partners? This is Music, Spirit and Accountability with Michael Cooper and Jay Hode. Alright, Mike, so we've been having some questions coming in from some of the people listening to us, and I'm really feeling to just invite that more. Now this podcast is growing, we're getting people reaching out, asking questions. Please, guys, reach out, ask the questions. The question that we had was, how do you deal with jealous partners? All right, so asking us for some thoughts around that. How do we deal with jealous partners? And I'm a big fan of this question because I've got some thoughts around this that I've shared before that people have resonated with, and maybe given them some different approaches on that. So, Mike, if that's cool with you, I might lean into this first, brother.
Yeah, brother. I'd
All
love
right,
to hear
awesome.
what you come up with.
Awesome. So, for me, this thing of how do you deal with jealous partners? How do you deal with a partner who's insecure, who is frequently coming up with questioning you, questioning how faithful you are, questioning who you are as a person? And for me, that's really what I straight up just boil it down to, is questioning, who I am as a person. When I say that, there's a lot to that, and obviously we're all many faceted. There's many facets of who we are in our personality. But for me, really, it kind of comes down to a trust issue. It kind of comes down to an issue of my own self-confidence, my own self-worth, and my own trust within myself, because there's part of me that feels if my partner can't feel safe and trustable in my energy in that way, then they're not seeing me for who I really am. They're not seeing the magic of my heart and the magic of my unique self, And in saying that, obviously there may be past woundings, like maybe this person has been cheated on a whole lot of times. I get it. And maybe they've been, whatever the story is, maybe they've got a whole lot of baggage. Maybe their father cheated on their mother. Maybe their mother cheated on their father. Maybe their brothers do. Maybe they've had it happen to them 5 times over. Cool, I get it. So obviously, within reason, there's can be a lot of space held in this conversation. There can be a lot of support. But what I've found dealing with this before, time and time again, I guess, and also with clients, is that at some point there's sort of, I invite a conversation of, look, these patterns have repeated multiple times now. This is the same thing that we've had come up around the same identical situation that we've been through, and we've held space for, and we've worked it out together, and we've had the deep chats, and we keep deepening our relationship because of the chats. And I love that. But just to check in with you, how many times do you want me, without sounding condescending and doing my best not to here, how many times would you like to repeat, or I'm wondering if you're open to having a conversation about how many times we would like to repeat this situation playing out, how you would like me to hold space for you, if there's anything that I can do so we can nip this in the bud before repeating the same situation again and again. Is there anything you think that I could do to be more secure and more safe for you? Because I would love that. And then the flip side to that also, that I'm feeling what it kind of boils down to for me is not being trusted. Like it's I feel like I'm showing up to the best of my ability. I want to show up more for you. There's part of me that's starting to feel like, you don't trust me. And to be honest, I love you and I want to work this out. I want to troubleshoot this with you, but I don't feel like I need to prove anything to you. I'm not trying to prove to you that I'm trustworthy. I know I'm trustworthy. I know I'm not going to cheat on you. I know I'm not creating things in my field that are going to make you, I'm not trying to do anything that's going to intentionally make you jealous. I'm not feeling I have leaky energy, whatever your story might be. So what can we do to put these things in place? And being that this pattern's now repeated 10 times over in the same situation, we can see there's a pattern developing here. Can you see that? Yes, I can. Cool. So can I help you? Can we put things in place to change that around? So there's some thoughts on it from me, brother. And I think for me, it kind of ends up wearing me down a little bit, and again holding that space of love. But the flip side is I know I'm trustable, and I've got nothing left to prove. If my partner can't see that, then I'm not trying to argue it or fight it. It's like, how could you do this? How could you do that? Okay, cool. Like, let's have this conversation again. But really, when you take that charge of not having anything left to prove, if you take that charge away, there's nothing to argue for. There's nothing to fight about. There's nothing to try and prove. Okay, I'm not trying to prove anything. So what do you need? And watching that play out, again, the flip side to that is not feeling like my energy is worthy, is trustable, and my self-worth is, yeah, it is. My self-worth is I am trustable, and I am worthy of love, and I am worth of a secure relationship, and these are things that I require in a beloved relationship. So that's my take on that question. Thank you so much for that question. How do you deal with jealous partners? And I'm happy to elaborate on that more, but Mike, feeling how you resonate with that, and also how do you deal with jealous partners?
Thank you, brother. I really love what you shared there. And that's something that's really new for me because in the past I've dealt with it terribly, absolutely atrociously. I took it very personally. It brought up a childhood wound for me, where I was accused of things that I didn't do and would end up getting in trouble for that.
Yeah.
And I was reliving that trauma. So every time I've gone through that same scenario, it would remind me of my growing up with my dad. And the next thing I was expecting to get a hiding for it. And so I dealt with it really terribly. I took it personally. I was deeply offended. And I would try and justify and prove. And I would bend myself into a pretzel, trying to become this person that I thought they wanted me to be, which was always a moving goalpost. You can never meet that mark because in reality, it's not who you are. And my self-worth, I could watch it just decline and it really hurt. And it was so traumatizing because obviously reliving that trauma from my childhood. So it's only till recently that I've realized that exactly what you said was that I'm good in who I am. Like I don't need to prove it anymore. I realize this is your wounding that's now being projected onto me. And so I'm not at the point yet, but the part of me wants to then say, okay, well, if someone's projecting that onto you, where are they that? That's the next step. If they're accusing you of cheating, they're accusing you of leaky energy, or if they're accusing you of being untrustworthy, really that's a projection. And where are they untrustworthy, or where are they doing the thing? I'm not at that point yet to have those conversations. I'm still at the point of just accepting. I'm like, hey, let me hold you. Let me hold you in that space. I think it's really important that the thing that you brought in was like, can we have a conversation around that? Yeah. That person also needs to be ready to have that conversation. They need to be ready to look at that projection and go, oh, well, where am I untrustworthy?
Yeah.
Is it a projection or what is it? Because it does often come from a wounded space. And most wounding comes from a space of fear. They fear their parents are going to, whatever their parents did, whether it was mum or dad doing the cheating or the untrustworthiness, they're fearing that happening again. And that's where the projection comes from. So, yeah, I think most relationships, it's a big generalization, would have a level of that to some degree where someone moves out of their secure attachment and falls into either the anxious attachment style and they get worried that the partner, oh, maybe I'm not enough. And yeah, it really needs to be, I think you're at that, what you were referring to is the ideal level where we can have a chat about it and go, look, this is a bit of a loop. We've done this 10 times now, and we haven't managed to really transcend it. Are you open to growth? Are you open to having the conversations we need to have to resolve this? And that means a level of me meeting you at this level and maybe just holding my ground.
Yeah.
And you look within, and I'm here to help. I'm here to say, what can I do to help that and facilitate that happening? And I think we're both capable of doing that. But yeah, ultimately that conversation around, hey, this is ultimately a loop. Can we stop looping? Because that's not growth. that will ultimately kill us. It will be the demise of us.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think what you just said, a couple of things on that, that thing of I'm not your healer, right? I'm not here to heal you, and not here, you said counselor, you know, I'm not your counselor. I think obviously, there's space holding, and I think having that conversation many times over and holding space, and whether it is counseling or healing sessions, whatever you can do. And a lot of the time that's really beautiful with your beloved too. Like I've had amazing healing sessions with my beloved where I've either been the healer and they've been the receiver, or vice versa, where they've been the healer and I've been the receiver, and that's been very potent. But I feel at some point there's got to be that drawing the line of, hey, this is literally the exact same pattern. I'd like to say ideally between 3 and 5 times, but let's say 10 times, just to be safe, just to be sure you've covered all the bases and done all the things, right? So that's probably a really good time to have that conversation. And I love the way you just set that up too with that invitation. Just also want to say what you said about it's often the reflection of those people who have those accusations with the jealousy and the leaky energy that are actually more likely to be the perpetrator than not. And I just want to say on that is so often true that I would say maybe 80 or 90% of the time, even I don't know, I don't want to talk percentages. I don't know what the truth is, but a lot of the time with that, there is some shadow or leaky energy coming from the person that's throwing those jealousy accusations at you that is actually doing that in the background. And let's say I would say more likely than not, like more than 50% of the time, that is the case. And then there's also the other case where it's legit. And I feel that too. And I've been so blessed to have partners that have come from both realms. And I feel like at the end of the day, you can feel it. There's a feeling. There's a feeling when you can look beneath the smoke and shadows and the magic show. There's a feeling underneath. Again, this isn't necessarily right or wrong, black and white, but I think of it like that comment, like, oh, yeah, we have amazing sex and they really make me laugh, but we fight all the time. But I think it's going to be okay. They're really aggressive, but man, when we make love, it's insane. And he makes me laugh. He's the funniest guy in the world. And you know what? What's really important to me is a guy that makes me laugh. I've always said I always just wanted a guy that made me laugh, and I've got that. So I feel really grateful. But we fight all the time, and he can be quite aggressive. But when he's not like that, everything's amazing. And again, our lovemaking amazing. I call bullshit, 100%. I call bullshit on that, and I call your truth in your core is that you want to feel at beyond all the amazing lovemaking, beyond all the making me laugh. What your deepest desire is to feel safe in your relationship, to feel like you're in a trusting, safe, and held relationship. That's at the core of everyone I've ever met. Beyond the stories. So I feel like, getting past the smoke and mirrors a little bit with if you're feeling that thing is your partner is giving you these jealous accusations, often maybe just look a little deeper into that, to feel into your heart. I don't think you need to go and look at their phone behind their back. I think you can feel it in your heart, whether that stuff's going on or not. And sometimes you just really need to take a step back on that.
Yeah, something that came up as you were talking then is our subconscious or unconscious mind is always going to pull us back to what is common and familiar. And so if you were saying we have great sex and he makes me laugh, but we argue a lot, where does that argument come from? Because sometimes the argument is born from your unconscious creating that, because the lovemaking there and the fun is there, and that feels really amazing to the logical mind. But to the subconscious mind, it goes, I don't trust that. So I need to create drama and chaos because that is common and familiar to me. Because I grew up in a chaotic environment where my dad was abusive. Let me create that so I can feel safe.
Yeah.
That's the real fucking problem.
Yeah.
That's where the crux of it is. But no one's willing to look at that. No one's really willing to look at what was my childhood like so that I can see what are the patterns that I'm creating in my current environment right now. Because what happened to me between 0 and 10 and 10 and 21 will actually dictate my current set of circumstances until I resolve that and heal that and integrate that part of me. And there's a part of you, as sick as this sounds and as twisted as the logical brain will think this is, that loves the chaos, that loves the fight, it loves the drama. That's where it feels damn safe.
Yep, 100%, brother. 100%. Yeah.
We have to do that inner work to sit with ourselves long enough to know that, yeah, I grew up in a really chaotic environment. And when it gets too loving and it gets too amazing and the sex gets too good, I need to go and sabotage that because I don't trust that. No one taught me how to love. My parents didn't show me a loving, healthy environment. They didn't communicate well. They did fight really well. Well, guess what? I'm going to create in my adult life
Yeah.
an environment that produces that. And if it's not showing up, people will say, it doesn't feel natural. But when
Mm.
we fight, that's how I derive love because that's what my parents showed me what love was.
Yeah.
It's so sad when you witness this happening. If all they could actually do was pull apart their childhood and go, holy shit, I'm recreating my parents' life, even though I said it's the one thing I don't want.
Yeah.
Because their unconscious mind has a patterning that was created in their formative years, and that created a strategy around that, which means they're going to replicate it out time and time and time again until they look at it and heal it.
Yeah, brother, 100%. And in my story, I've been really blessed to come up in quite a loving, well, very, very loving, supported childhood. In my story, my biological father wasn't present in my life from maybe
Mm.
1.5 years old or so to, I think we reconnected when I was like 36 or something. But the man who stepped in to raise me and is that father figure was just exceptional. And my mother was just exceptional. So I grew up with a lot of love, and just with what you were just saying then, I feel like that's part of my story is those requirements of that scenario in my relationship. Sure, there's ups and downs and all the things, but that's kind of what I'm used to. And I look at, my relationships and where I resonate with most in my most authentic place. It's definitely in that calmer, loving space. And yeah, I like that a lot. And then there's also finding that fire within that too, of that dark masculine energy as well, whether it's in the man or the woman, or call it dark masculine, dark feminine, whatever you want. But finding that edge and that darkness that is so sexy and so
Mm.
yummy in that polarity as well. So it's an interesting blend. But yeah, really cool that you said that too, man.
Yeah, and that's your model of the world. Your model of the world, which is your subconscious patterning, grew up in an environment where it was loving and healthy and calm, and you spoke about things at a rational level, and there wasn't this angst and fight and chaos. So that's what you will gravitate towards. You will attract in people that provide that kind of environment, and those that attract in, well, sorry, if you came across someone that was sort of chaos and drama and fight, you'd be like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right, and you'll withdraw from it because it's like that. My nervous system says that's not good for me, and
Yeah.
so you just gently work your way out and attract in those that are aligned with that. And it's just really beautiful about the way that you were brought up. There was something that you shared with me on one of our personal chats, just sort of gravitating back to that. How do we deal with those partners that are maybe jealous or projecting or whatever that may be? You shared a beautiful strategy with me, which is, it was just around boundary setting. And in that environment, you said, hey, we've got this thing. We seem to be looping on this behavior, this pattern, this thing that's going on. Really here to work with you on that. I'm really here to hold that space for you. However, I can only do that for a period of time. And beyond that, you're choosing to run that strategy or that pattern or continue with this behavior. And I might give you 3 months. There's a little bit of leeway that, oh, okay, we slipped up and we fell back into that old pattern, or we fell back into that jealous way or that jealous comment or whatever it was. And I'm willing to hold that space for you for 3 months. But after that point, I really have to review that you're consciously choosing to do this thing. And in that point, I need to question, is this the right relationship for me? Because that will start to question, I will start to question my self-worth, my values, who I am, how am I showing up? And I need to prioritize that
Yeah.
as well. That's a healthy boundary. And so here's the boundary. I've got 3 months for you, but the consequences of that, if it continues on beyond that point, I can no longer continue to enable you in that way.
Yeah. That's really well said there, brother. I just interject that I think there's that fine line. I love the way you just said that. I won't continue to enable. I'm going to choose not to continue to enable you. But also around that time, like I feel like I definitely wouldn't be orientated to say like I'm going to give it 3 months, and you might have just been saying that for an example, but it's with that energy, it feels like you're speaking to a naughty child a little bit too. Like, 3 months on this day, on the 31st of March, 2024, I'm out, right? Like, it's kind of not like that. It's like that gentleness of like, so what are you comfortable with? Could we have a chat about how long do you think we should do this? Should it be like a 3 month period, or should it be like 10 more times? Do you want to play this out? Like, do you want to play this out like 3.5 more times? What are we going to call it? And it's that laughter and play around it. Like, literally, it's that easy. Like, do you want to call it and say like, like, it's that textbook. We're just going to keep repeating these patterns that I can guarantee you. I can time it. We can call it the halfway through the fourth time you do it, well, that's it. So we're literally, and you can have a joke around it. It's like, wow, it's that obvious. Like, it's going to play out just like this that many times over. It's like, well, yeah, it's done it 10 times already, and so just a little softness around that, and again, bringing union for that conversation to be had of like, let's decide this together. I think if we come in with like, yep, it's going to be 3 months and this is my decision, I'm putting my line in the sand. Like, it's one thing to say this is crossing my boundaries and in my truth, my honoring of myself, this is not the kind of relationship that I would choose to, this is not the kind of situations I would, got to word that carefully. This is not the kind of situations that I would really want in my relationships, in the kind of relationship that in my ideal relationship. But I love you and I want to work this out with you. So can we troubleshoot this together? How many times do you want to repeat this? Because again, I'm not your healer. There's other things too. Can we look at counseling? Can we look at other things to help you get what you need to do the healing you need? Because I'm not your healer. And on a side note on that too, brother, you said about those people coming into your life with that energy. It's funny, I never feel worn down by people coming into my space, and anyone that knows me, including any listener listening right now, they can reach out as an open invite into my space, and I will do my best, to the best of my ability, doing my best not to cross any boundaries of myself and my time with my family and my friends and you, brother, and everyone else that I love so much, to get back to you, to get back to everyone. But what I've found is I don't get frustrated by people repeating, let's say repeat offenders, like, Jay, the thing's happened again, this is crap, what should I do? Because what happens is they get worn out of me and they stop being in touch with me. Like you said, they're like magnetized into my field, or they're magnetized out of my field. And when I'm not giving them the responses that they're used to, and it becomes, man, thanks so much for sharing, what else is there, and there's that, as opposed to, yeah, I get that, and once this happened to me, and that's really shit, and you're so right, I'm not validating. I'm like, yeah, cool, thanks for sharing, like, what else? And at first that's like, oh, well, actually, blah 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 blah. I'm like, cool, what else is there? Blah 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 blah. And then after enough times, and maybe I'll share something and be like, yeah, that was really great, or I'll never hear from them again, or whatever it is. But eventually their energy disappears. They disappear out of my field. And it's always been that way. And so I don't ever get worn down by it. I actually really love it. And they generally filter themselves out rather than me having to cut the cord or get upset or frustrated by it. So it's interesting.
So I'll double down on that. So that's my lesson as well. When we first came into this, I said I was in the past, quite inept at this, where I would take it personally. And when I was taking it personally, I would get worn down by it because I was taking it personally, where I just witness it now, a little bit like you were saying then. You just witness them. It's like, okay, cool. Yep, it's all yours. You can carry that bag. I've learned that my resilience and my ability to tolerance is far greater because I'm not carrying the load for them. I'm not carrying their emotions for them. I'm not onboarding it as mine. I'm like, okay, that's yours, and that's okay. I'm happy to hold that space for you. I'm just going to hold my ground here. I'm a sovereign being, and I do have a boundary about what I'm going to onboard now for you. And so I find that's also helped me as well, where, I don't carry the baggage anymore. That's really refreshing.
Yeah.
Really refreshing. Whereas before I would carry the bags for the ancestors, the mums and the dads and them and, all the people. And it got really heavy. I took it really personally.
Man, I love that. I don't have to carry the baggage. So just, I think, to summarize that too, again, the question asked was how do you deal with jealous partners?
Mm.
Yeah, just remember you don't have to. Number one, you don't have to.
Good
Okay,
choice.
so let's rephrase that question. How? So yeah, how do you choose to? Why do you? Yeah, even why are you choosing to be with jealous partners? So yeah, why are you choosing to stay with jealous partners? But how do you deal with them is kind of the next decision.
Well, that's a great question. What you just asked is why you choose. What I think it was why are you attracting jealous
Yeah,
partners, which is the better question, because that's really it's on you.
yeah,
At that point, I'm like, okay, what in me needs to be resolved to stop attracting jealous partners? What am I attracting from my childhood to
yeah,
show me something that hasn't been healed inside myself? Do I need to prove to myself and prove and validate to people? So is there a people pleasing aspect to me? Is there something in me that needs to be healed? Because that's this person is a beautiful reflection or a beautiful mirror of what needs to be healed within inside myself that I'm not willing to look at. So if I'm seeing someone that's saying, "Oh, you're jealous," they're jealous, or I'm doing these things, or a projection, clearly I'm needing to prove myself to them.
yeah,
And when can I stop doing that and let
yeah,
that go? Those
yeah,
people will either one of two things. They will stop being jealous
yeah,
or they will gravitate out of my space because it's no longer a thing for me.
yeah,
They're not getting the reaction that they need to fill their void. So they're either going to move on or it will resolve itself. And like the universal law of balance, when I resolve it in myself, that paradox will have been resolved. So it will no longer present.
yeah. Yeah, so true, brother. And that's that thing, and that can be received, someone that hasn't dealt with that energy before when it's kind of like when they come at you with you're a cheater, you're a bad person, I can tell that you're doing this, and it's like, okay, let's have this conversation. And then throughout that conversation, after you've shared all you can, and there's still coming maybe at you with that, it's like, look, honestly, I've got nothing to prove. I don't feel like I have to prove myself to you. Is there anything that I can do to make you feel like I've proved myself to you for you, kind of thing? That's kind of, without trying to again sound, it's always a fine line between sounding condescending,
Mm.
but you get that sort of idea. And then that can be combated with, well, you're just an asshole, like you see, you've just proved it, you just proved it by saying that, like, you don't care. I was like, okay, cool. So I feel like I do care. That's my truth. If you don't believe that I do, that's okay. You're allowed to believe whatever you want. If you want to have this conversation and go deeper on this and maybe, see why there's a miscommunication, that I'm feeling like I am telling the truth, that I'm feeling like I do care, and that I feel like I'd actually like to come to a resolution to this, I'm here for you. And
Mm.
if not, I can only argue my truth and, you know, my flag in the ground. Like I don't have anything to prove. I don't have a flag to put in the ground. Like, okay, you win. There you go. You win. So what's next? Should we not continue to be in a relationship anymore? I'd really not prefer that because I really love you and I'd like to, or I really like you and I'm really loving getting to know you and enjoying my time. But again, I've got nothing to prove to you. So is it possible that we can go about this in another way, or there's anything that I can do to you for you or to you to make you feel more supported? Yeah, yeah,
It's like the analogy of tug of war. If we could, you know, if we could reach out and grab each other's hand right now, if I have my perspective and we've locked arms and you've got your perspective and they're polarized, so we're doing this, we're
yeah,
pulling apart from left hand to right hand. Well, we're in tension. There's a paradox that needs to be resolved. But if I let go of my perspective and go, hey, there's no pull anymore, so they can pull as much as they want, and my arm's just going to gently go with them. There's no tension anymore,
yeah,
and all tension is looking to do is to be resolved. There's a conflict in the perspectives. If I let go of my perspective, there's no tension.
yeah,
So at that point, I have resolved the paradox. I've
yeah,
resolved, like, hey, I don't have to put my flag in the ground. I don't have to own my perspective so dearly. It's like yours is yours, and you're fully entitled to it. I'm just not going to hold that for you and let it go.
Yeah, brother. And I think having the conversations around what your, conditions and requirements are of your ideal beloved situation, as far as, you know, I invite my partner, if they see a sexy man walk by, if they see, a guy that's attracted to him, like, that's cool. Like, you can look at him if you want. Like, if, and it doesn't have to be like, it can be, I guess. So I'd probably have a problem if they were like gawking, like, right in my face, like, check out how sexy that guy is. Why aren't you more like that? That would probably be a trigger. I'd say that definitely would for me. But as far as like, a double take on a beautiful man walking by or something, like, they're only human. Like, I'm not going to be triggered by that. I want to support that and also admire the beauty of that man myself, and be
I
like, wow,
do.
that's
I
something
really
to
do.
aspire to right there. Like, he's really fit and really, handsome or really well groomed, whatever it might be. That's a beautiful conversation to have. Whereas, if you're out to dinner and a beautiful girl walks by in an incredible dress and is really attractive in your perception of what an attractive woman is, and you glimpse at her, like, for some people that can be a deal breaker at a date. That can end the whole
Mm.
night, especially if there's been jealousy issues, or maybe it's social media. You see someone on social media and you like their post or whatever. So
Yeah.
maybe getting clear and having those conversations with your partner about, what's okay and what's not okay, and coming to ideally a happy medium on that, because you might have really contrasting views on that. I know, what I just said about admiring a beautiful man or a beautiful woman, for some people is a real trigger. I'd say probably for more than 50% of people, it's probably a real trigger,
Yeah.
or a trigger of some sort at times. And yeah,
But
anyway, so
we can say it about a painting or we can say it about a mountain, but all of a sudden we've put a label of that's an attractive man or woman, and that has a connotation to it. So nothing has meaning other than the meaning you give it.
yeah,
But
it,
when we label something other than a human being, we can say, yeah, wow, that's beautiful and not mean anything. However, when we feel there's competition
yeah,
with that woman, now you're comparing yourself against that woman and you feel insecure about that. That's the underlying issue.
yeah,
It's just that we have a different meaning to that. I can look at a guy and go, damn, that's what, like, he's a really good looking guy.
yeah,
And I refrain from doing that to women because I know that other women get insecure about that.
yeah,
So I'm suppressing one side of myself. It's totally fine for me to do with guys. And I have no problem with it. But with women, I've learned over the years that I need to suppress that somewhat because most women take offense to it.
yeah. So I feel like we're going into another podcast here.
Yeah,
We'll have to wrap it
probably.
up shortly, but I think that, yeah, I definitely feel what you're saying about the words, but it's also something beneath the words, and there doesn't necessarily need to be words spoken to be interpreted or misinterpreted by another being. It can be a glance, or it could be looking away without even looking at the thing that was the trigger, and that could be an issue too. But again, I feel like there's work to be done here, and it's all part of the journey for me. When I was so blessed to be studying tantra and energetics, just learning to see the beauty in all things and the
All things.
purity in all things,
All
of
things.
from the wind blowing on this blade of grass over here to to a cloud, to a ripple in water, or to a brick, or to a piece of carpet, or to a beautiful woman, or a beautiful heart. Like, again, we've had this conversation before that often, at the supermarket or somewhere, we'll go out of our way to give the lady at the checkout a beautiful compliment and say some things that we really appreciate about her smile, or the way she just packed that bag so elegantly, or maybe a lady or a man who appears to be, I don't know, not the textbook version of what a good looking human fits into that category, maybe in, let's say, some sort of an extreme way. I'll often go up to people like that and just give some gratitude and love. Like, for me, I had an injury on my face like 10 years ago and lost the use of one side of my face for like 3 years, and it could have a whole different spin on people with messed up faces, that you can't. It's like, it's being in this thing, it's like, it's not you, it is you. And you see people looking at you funny, and you hear kids saying like, oh, what's with that guy and his face and stuff right in front of you. It's just it is what it is. But there's also a beauty and a peace that comes with that, mostly when you look at yourself, like the reflection on that,
Yes.
when to still see the beauty in yourself when those things are happening, and being at peace, and the show must go on. I feel like all those parts make up part of that underlying energy beneath the words. And if people can't feel that in you, if people can't feel your authenticness of who you are, and that there's nothing to fear, that there's nothing that's going to prevent them from doing the best they can to love you, then you're trying to climb a tree that you can't climb. Like, just don't be with them
Yeah.
anymore, or do what you need to do the work to get on your journey. Just get your shit together. That's my advice. I've been listening to Gary Vee today, so I'm more like,
Yes.
just get your shit together, deal with it, get out of my face. So yeah.
I love that, man. That's that. What was coming through for me as you were speaking was there's a level of hierarchy, competition, and separation. And when we can see the lady at the checkout is just a beautiful being who's being of loving service, and we can see the guy that's walking along the beach with no shirt on as just another version of myself, or if I could see you, my dear brother Jay, and not separate myself from you and just realize we're all one, then all of a sudden there is no jealousy. There's no jealousy because we're the same thing. We're the same being. It's an appreciation of life. It's an appreciation of oneness, unity, union, singularity. And I feel instantly better just talking about that. This whole conversation has been about separation of like right and wrong, good and bad, you're this, you're that, which is jealousy. And it's like, fuck, we can just come back to this place of singularity and love, which is all there really is. I feel instantly better just by speaking into that. And that whole jealousy thing is really just diving deep into the depths of separation, fear, and not enough.
Mm.
And can we just take a breath and come back to this space of, I love you. Like, fuck, I love you as a man, as a human. I don't even see a man. I do not see a man when I speak to you. I see a being. I see love. I just see wholeness. And can we see the whole world that way? Can we see every other individual that way? And all of a sudden we collapse this separation and everyone is beautiful. Everyone, regardless of their disfigures, disabled, disabilities, disfigurements, or insecurities even.
Yeah.
Everyone is just doing the best right where they are right now. And can we love them for how they show up? Can we love them right where they are? Can we love them right where they stand in their mess, in their dysfunction, in their dis-ease? And all of a sudden, there's no jealousy. None. I don't see it that way. I just see everyone as a being that needs my love and is ready for it and deserves my love. And I don't mean love as in romantic love. I mean the energy and the frequency of love. And that's where this jealousy comes through, is we don't feel that we're worthy, we're enough, we're not whole and we're not complete. And I need you to complete me. When in reality, you don't. You're already whole. You're already enough. And we can love everyone and everything equally because that's our birthright. And let's collapse that separation. And let's collapse this hierarchy of better than, they're better than you, better than me. No, they're not. They're perfect right where they are, as are you. And every one of our listeners is perfect right where they are. And you know what? I love you right where you are. I love you with all of your things. I don't judge you. And judging is jealousy. Judging is like, I'm fearing that because I don't know it. And that's where fear comes from. That's where judgment comes from. Judgment comes from my fear of the unknown. But what if I just knew that you're amazing and you're beautiful and you are me, I am you. We are the same thing, just in a different skin suit. And we're of the same original thinking substance, which is love. And let's collapse that and come back to love, oneness. And all of a sudden, all of that, anything else outside that is a delineation of love. It's a separation of love. It's a moving away from love.
Yeah.
And jealousy is the lowest right down there because it carries guilt and shame. So that means it's the lowest vibrational frequency in us. Can we transcend up a little higher? Can we take a deeper breath? And can we come back to that space of love and you know what, I'm enough, and so are you.
Feels so beautiful to hear you speak like that, brother, and it feels really safe and trustable and yummy, and there's an authenticity in your voice now that is, it's that shift, and it's, along this journey of this conversation over the last 40 minutes or so, there's a beautiful shift that's just taken place with that energy in our conversation. Sort of came in pretty charged and now feeling like all loved up, you know. So,
Is the charge of jealousy, even just speaking on the topic,
yeah,
the charge within us, because we have to feel like we all possess jealousy. And to
yeah,
speak on the topic, we have to dive into that charge to bring it back to that space of oneness and connectedness and love. And it brings that resonance that we operate at.
yeah,
That is us, like really, that is us at the core. And that's really everyone at the core, but we get caught up in that. So yeah,
yeah, 100%, man. 100%. Wow.
bringing it back to that oneness and that union, that inner union. Like, let's talk about that. There's an inner union here of a masculine and feminine energy that is dysregulated if we're feeling jealousy. And let's look at that inner union first. Because if I'm feeling jealousy in my romantic relationship in the outside world, that means there's a level of dysregulation in my own inner union. And if I can solve
100%.
that, guess what gets automatically fixed? My outer union. But that means me bringing those energies back to oneness and union and togetherness.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm already good. I'm already whole. I'm already complete.
Yep. And awareness, like how many times am I comparing myself to others on social media every day? Because if that's happening, there's probably jealousy playing out in your relationship as well. Yeah.
And it's just the mirror that you need to see it in. That's just the vehicle that's presented to you to look within. There's nothing in this whole human experience that exists outside of us. Everything is inward. We just see the outside world as the representation to show us the mirror that we need to look back in and go, oh, that's a paradox that needs to be resolved. That's a conflict. There's tension that needs to be resolved. It just happens that the outside world shows us that.
Brother, thank you so much for your time today, man. I love you so much and just so, again, inspired. And the whole reason we created this podcast in the beginning, if there's any listeners out there that have some questions, please keep them coming through. We're going to do our best to get through everything as we go. And yeah, thank you so much, bro.
Thank you, brother. Love you, mate.
See you next week.
You will.